Good evening, and welcome back to Boring Science for Sleep, the quiet place where science slows down, where curiosity feels gentle, and where your thoughts can softly drift toward rest. Tonight, we begin with something that feels almost impossible. A sensation without a body, a feeling without a physical source. Imagine, for a moment, that you raise your hand. You can almost feel it now. The position of your fingers, the subtle awareness of where your hand is in space. But what if that hand was no longer there? And yet, you could still feel it, still sense its movement, still notice its presence. This is not imagination. It is something many people experience in real life. A phenomenon known as phantom limbs. A quiet and mysterious condition where a person continues to feel an arm, a leg, or another part of the body, even after it is gone. Sometimes the sensation is gentle, a faint awareness, a memory-like feeling. Other times it can be vivid, as if the limb is still fully present, able to move, able to respond, and in some cases, even able to feel pain. Tonight, in this calm and slow journey, we will explore 100 sleepy facts about phantom limbs. We will gently uncover how the brain creates the feeling of a body, how it remembers what is no longer there, and why the mind can sometimes hold on to experiences that the physical world has already let go. Along the way, we will discover something deeper, that the body we feel is not only made of flesh and bone, but also of signals, of patterns, of a quiet map inside the brain. Before we continue, let me ask you something simple. Where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? Maybe you are lying in bed in the stillness of midnight, or listening as the evening slowly fades into night. If you feel like it, leave a comment and share your location and time. It's always comforting to know that somewhere across the world, others are listening in this same quiet moment. Now, let your breathing slow, let your body soften into stillness, and allow your mind to gently follow the rhythm of this story. Because tonight, we are exploring something that reminds us that the body you feel is not only something you have, but something your mind quietly creates. As we gently continue tonight's journey, we move inward, not to the body itself, but to something quieter, the place where the body is felt. Inside the brain, there exists a kind of map, not a map of roads or places, but a map of you. A map where every part of your body is represented. Your hands, your arms, your face, even the smallest movements of your fingers. This map lives in a region of the brain known as the somatosensory cortex. It rests along the surface of the brain, folded gently like soft hills, quietly receiving signals from the body. Every touch, every movement, every sensation, all of it passes through this map. And over time, the brain learns something remarkable. It learns the shape of you, not by looking, but by feeling. It builds a representation of your body based on signals, patterns, repetition, the steady rhythm of experience. And slowly, without effort, this map becomes stable, reliable, familiar. Each part of your body has its own place within it, but this map is not drawn equally. Some areas are larger than others. The hands, for example, take up a surprisingly large portion. So does the face, because these parts of the body are rich with sensation, sensitive, detailed. The brain gives more space to what it feels more often. This creates a strange and fascinating image. A distorted version of the human body, known as the homunculus, a figure where the hands are large, the lips are wide, and other parts appear smaller than expected, not because they are physically larger, but because the brain experiences them more intensely. This is the body as the brain understands it, not as it looks in the mirror, but as it is felt from within. And once this map is formed, it does not disappear easily. It remains active, even when something changes, even when the physical body is no longer the same. This is where phantom limbs begin to make sense, because when a part of the body is lost, the map inside the brain does not immediately change. The area that once represented that limb is still there, still active, still expecting signals, still holding its place within the larger pattern. The brain continues to feel that part of the body, because in its internal map, it still exists. This is not a mistake. It is simply the brain doing what it has always done, maintaining continuity, holding on to the structure it has built over time. Updating this map is not immediate. It requires experience, new signals, new patterns, and even then, the original map may not fully disappear. Instead, it slowly adapts, shifts, reorganizes, but traces of the old representation can remain, like a memory that continues to echo. There is also a deep connection between the body and the nervous system. Every sensation you feel begins as a signal, traveling through nerves from the body to the brain. These signals are interpreted, organized, placed onto the map. But once the map is established, the brain does not rely only on incoming signals. It also relies on expectation, prediction, the quiet assumption that the body is still there, just as it has always been. And so, even in the absence of new input, the brain may still generate the experience. This is why phantom sensations can feel so real, because to the brain, they are real. They are processed in the same way as any other sensation. The same regions activate, the same patterns emerge. There is no clear boundary that says, this is imagined and this is real. There is only experience. And experience, for the brain, is shaped by its internal model, its map. In many ways, the brain trusts this map more than the physical body itself, because the map is what it has learned, what it has reinforced over time, what it has come to rely on. So even when the body changes, the map remains, at least for a while. This reveals something quietly profound, that the body we feel is not only defined by what is physically present, but by what the brain remembers, what it expects, what it has learned to be true. The hand you feel, the position of your leg, the awareness of your body in space. All of it comes from this internal map, a map that is constantly active, constantly shaping your experience. Even now, as you rest and listen, your brain is quietly maintaining that map, holding the shape of your body, keeping it stable, familiar. And this is why phantom limbs are possible, because the brain does not simply reflect reality, it constructs it gently, continuously, from patterns built over time. As we continue our journey, we will explore something even more subtle, because this map is not only structural, it is also remembered, held within memory. And even when the body changes, the memory of it can remain, softly, persistently, like a quiet echo of something that once was. As we continue drifting through this quiet exploration, we begin to notice something even more subtle. The body is not only something we feel in the present, it is something we remember. Every movement you have ever made, every step, every reach, every small gesture has left a trace inside the brain, not as a single memory, but as patterns, repetitions, pathways that have been strengthened over time. When you move your hand, for example, the brain does not need to think carefully about how to do it. The motion feels natural, effortless, almost automatic, because the brain has learnt it deeply. This learning is not only stored as conscious memory, it is stored as sensory motor memory, a kind of memory that combines sensation and movement, the feeling of where your body is, and the intention to move it. Together, these create a seamless experience. You think, and the body responds. You intend, and the movement follows. Over time, this connection becomes so familiar that the brain begins to expect it. It assumes that the body is always there, always ready to respond. And this expectation becomes part of the brain's internal model. Even when the physical body changes, this model does not immediately update. It continues to operate based on what it has learned. This is why in phantom limb experiences, a person may feel as though they can still move a limb that is no longer there. The intention to move is still present. The brain sends the command, and because it has done so countless times before, it expects a response. But instead of receiving new sensory input from the body, the brain fills in the experience itself, creating the sensation of movement, a movement that feels real, even without physical confirmation. This can feel almost natural, as if nothing has changed, as if the limb is still part of the body. This is the power of learned experience. The brain is not only reacting to the present, it is continuously shaped by the past. Every action you have repeated has strengthened the pathways that support it, and these pathways do not disappear instantly. They remain active, ready to be used again. This also explains why phantom sensations can feel automatic. They do not require effort. They arise on their own, because the systems that generate them have been practiced over and over again, like a familiar rhythm that continues even after the music has stopped. There is also a deeper connection between intention and perception. In the brain, these two are closely linked. When you intend to move, the brain not only sends a signal to the muscles, it also prepares for the sensation that should follow. It predicts what the movement will feel like, where the limb will be, how it will move through space. This prediction is part of the experience, and when the body is no longer there to provide feedback, the prediction itself can become the experience. This is why phantom movement can feel so convincing, because it is generated from the same system that normally guides real movement. The brain is doing what it has always done, predicting, anticipating, completing the pattern. Over time, however, something begins to change. The brain is not fixed. It is adaptable, flexible, capable of reshaping itself based on new experiences. This ability is known as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity allows the brain to reorganize its connections, to adjust its internal map, to respond to changes in the body. But this process is gradual. It does not happen instantly, because the brain does not simply erase old patterns. It slowly modifies them, layer by layer, experience by experience. If new signals are introduced through touch, through movement, through therapy, the brain begins to adjust. It learns new patterns, new expectations, and over time the intensity of phantom sensations may decrease, or change, or shift into something different. But the original memory may not fully disappear, because it is part of the brain's history, part of the patterns that have shaped its understanding of the body. This reveals something deeply meaningful, that the brain does not simply reflect what is present. It carries forward what has been. It remembers, not only in thoughts, but in sensation, in movement, in the quiet awareness of the body. And sometimes, those memories remain vivid enough to be felt, even when the body itself has changed. This is not an error. It is a reflection of how deeply the brain learns, how strongly it holds on to experience, how gently it adapts over time. As we continue, we will explore something even more intriguing, because these sensations are not always neutral. Sometimes they can carry something more intense, a feeling that seems impossible at first, a feeling of pain in a part of the body that is no longer there. And understanding this will take us even deeper into the quiet complexity of the mind. As we continue this quiet journey, we arrive at something that feels even more surprising. Not just the sensation of a limb that is no longer there, but the feeling of pain within it. A pain that can feel sharp, or dull, or constant, or shifting. A pain that seems to come from a place that no longer physically exists. This experience is known as phantom pain, and at first it can feel difficult to understand, because we often think of pain as something that comes directly from the body, a signal from tissue, from injury, from something physically present. But the truth is, pain does not actually exist in the body itself. It exists in the brain. The body sends signals, but the experience of pain is something the brain creates, interprets, shapes. Every time you feel pain, your brain is receiving information from nerves, signals that travel through the spinal cord, up into regions of the brain that process sensation and emotion. But these signals are not pain on their own. They are information. And the brain decides how to interpret that information, whether to amplify it, whether to reduce it, whether to perceive it as pain at all. This is why the same physical event can feel different in different situations, why attention, emotion, and context can change the experience. And in the case of phantom pain, something unusual happens. The physical source is gone, but the system that processes pain is still active, still functioning, still capable of generating the experience. One part of this comes from the nerves. After a limb is lost, the nerves that once connected it to the brain do not simply disappear. They may still send signals, sometimes irregular ones, sometimes spontaneous. These signals travel upward, just as they always have. And when they reach the brain, they are interpreted, often as coming from the missing limb, because that is where the brain expects them to originate. But the story does not end with the nerves. The brain itself plays an active role. The regions that represent the missing limb remain present, still part of the body map we explored earlier. And these regions can become active even without external input, generating sensations internally, including pain. This is why phantom pain can feel so real, because it is processed in the same networks as any other pain, the same pathways, the same structures, the same emotional responses. To the brain, there is no simple distinction between real and phantom. There is only the experience. And when the brain creates that experience, it feels real. There is also a connection between pain and memory. If a limb experienced pain before it was lost, the brain may have encoded that pattern, that sensation, and later it may reproduce it, not intentionally, but as part of the learned patterns it has stored. This can make phantom pain feel familiar, recognizable, as if the body is remembering something that once happened. At the same time, the brain is constantly trying to make sense of incoming signals, to interpret them, to place them within its internal model. And when signals arrive without a clear source, the brain may still assign them meaning, filling in the gap, completing the pattern. This is one of the most remarkable aspects of the human mind. Its ability to create a complete experience, even from incomplete information. But just as phantom pain can arise, it can also change. It may become less intense over time, it may shift in location, or it may disappear entirely. This variability reflects the brain's flexibility, its ability to adapt, to reorganize, to reshape its internal patterns. Through processes like neuroplasticity, the brain can gradually reduce the activity in areas associated with the missing limb, or reinterpret the signals it receives, changing the experience, sometimes gently, sometimes slowly, but always in motion. This reminds us that pain is not a fixed signal. It is a dynamic experience, shaped by many factors, by the body, by the brain, by memory, by attention, by expectation. And in phantom pain, we see this complexity clearly. Pain without injury, sensation without a physical source, experience created entirely within the mind. This does not make the pain less real. It simply reveals where it comes from, not from the body alone, but from the intricate system that connects the body and the brain, a system that is always interpreting, always creating meaning, always shaping experience. And within this understanding, there is something quietly reassuring, that even something as intense as pain is part of a system that can change, that can adapt, that can soften over time. As we continue, we will explore something both surprising and hopeful, a simple technique, using nothing more than reflection and light, that can change how the brain perceives the body, and in doing so, can gently reduce the experience of phantom pain. Segment 4. The mirror trick that changes reality to 1,200 words. As we continue this gentle exploration, we arrive at something both simple and quietly remarkable, a way to change how the brain feels the body, using nothing more than a mirror. At first, this may sound almost too simple. How could a reflection, a mere image, change something as complex as phantom pain? And yet, in many cases, it does. This approach is known as mirror therapy, and its power comes not from the mirror itself, but from how the brain understands what it sees. To begin, imagine a person sitting with a mirror placed in front of them. Their intact limb is positioned so that its reflection appears where the missing limb would be. When they look into the mirror, they do not see absence. They see a complete body, a whole pair of limbs. When the intact limb moves, the reflection moves as well, and to the brain, this movement appears natural, expected, real, because the brain relies heavily on visual information. What we see shapes what we feel, often more than we realize. The brain continuously combines multiple sources of information: touch, movement, position, and vision. Together, these signals create the experience of the body. But among these, vision often plays a dominant role. If what we see strongly suggests something is happening, the brain tends to accept it, even if other signals are unclear. This is why mirror therapy can be so effective. When a person sees the reflected limb moving, the brain receives a powerful visual signal. It sees the limb as present. It sees it moving freely, and this visual input begins to reshape the internal map. The brain updates its expectations. The tension between what it predicts and what it perceives begins to soften. In cases of phantom pain, this can be especially meaningful. Sometimes, the brain holds onto the sensation of the missing limb being in an uncomfortable position, clenched, twisted, frozen. But without physical feedback, it cannot correct that position. The pain remains, because the brain has no new information to replace it. But when mirror therapy is used, the person can move their intact limb in a relaxed, natural way, and through the reflection, the brain perceives that the missing limb is also moving, also relaxing, also releasing tension. This visual illusion provides the brain with the missing feedback, and slowly, the sensation can change. The pain may reduce, or shift, or even disappear for a time. This is not magic. It is the brain responding to new information, adjusting its internal model, releasing patterns that no longer match what it perceives. This technique was first explored in neuroscience experiments that revealed something profound: that the brain's representation of the body is not fixed. It is flexible, responsive, capable of change, even in adulthood, even after long periods of time. Mirror therapy became one of the most well-known demonstrations of this flexibility, showing that perception itself can be guided, shaped, influenced, and this leads to a deeper understanding that what we experience as reality is not simply what exists, but what the brain interprets. The brain does not passively receive the world. It actively constructs it, combining signals, resolving differences, creating a coherent picture. And when one source of information changes, the entire experience can change with it. In this way, the mirror becomes more than an object. It becomes a tool, a way to gently guide the brain toward a new understanding, a new pattern, a new sense of the body. This also reflects a broader principle in neuroscience, that the brain is always balancing between expectation and input, between what it predicts and what it perceives. When these two align, the experience feels stable. But when they differ, the brain seeks to resolve the difference, to restore harmony. Mirror therapy works by providing a clear, consistent visual signal, one that the brain can trust, one that helps reduce the mismatch. And as the mismatch fades, so does the discomfort. This reveals something quietly hopeful, that even deeply ingrained sensations, even persistent patterns, can be changed, not through force, but through gentle shifts in perception, through new experiences, through subtle guidance. It also reminds us that the boundaries between reality and illusion are not as rigid as they may seem, because if an illusion can reduce pain, if a reflection can change sensation, then what we feel is always shaped by interpretation, by the brain's ongoing process of understanding. This does not make our experiences less real. It simply shows how they are formed, how they can be influenced, how they can evolve. And within this, there is a sense of calm, a quiet reassurance that the mind is not fixed, that it is always adapting, always capable of change, even in ways that are gentle and almost invisible. As we continue, we will explore this flexibility even further, because the brain does not only adapt in response to mirrors or illusions, it is constantly reshaping itself, reorganizing, learning, responding to the world, a process known as neuroplasticity. And understanding this process will bring us even closer to the quiet, evolving nature of the mind. As we continue this gentle journey, we arrive at one of the most important ideas in understanding the brain, a quiet truth that changes how we see everything we have explored so far. The brain is not fixed. It is not static. It is not a structure that remains the same throughout life. Instead, the brain is always changing, always adapting, always reshaping itself. This ability is known as neuroplasticity. The word may sound complex, but its meaning is simple. It describes the brain's capacity to reorganize its connections, to adjust its patterns, to learn from experience. Every time you learn something new, every time you repeat a movement, every time you feel, think, or adapt, the brain is subtly changing, Connections between neurons strengthen. Some pathways become more active, others fade. And over time, these changes shape how the brain functions. This is how learning happens. This is how memory forms. And this is also how the brain adapts when the body changes. In the case of phantom limbs, neuroplasticity plays a central role because when a part of the body is no longer present, the brain does not simply leave that space empty. Instead, it begins to reorganize. The area of the somatosensory cortex that once represented the missing limb becomes available, and slowly, other regions may begin to expand into that space. This process is sometimes called remapping. One of the most fascinating examples of this involves the face. In the brain's body map, the face is located near the area that represents the hands. So when the hand is no longer present, the sensory signals from the face may begin to activate nearby regions. As a result, a person might feel a sensation in their phantom hand. When their face is touched, a gentle brush on the cheek may be experienced as a touch in a hand that is no longer there. This may seem surprising at first, but it is simply the brain adapting, reorganizing its map, responding to the signals it continues to receive. This flexibility is not an error. It is a feature, a reflection of the brain's ability to make use of available resources, to remain efficient, to remain responsive. But this process does not happen instantly. The brain changes slowly, gradually, through repetition and experience. It takes time for new patterns to form, for old pathways to weaken, for the map to adjust. This is why phantom sensations may persist for some time, because the original patterns are still active, still reinforced by past experience, still part of the brain's history. Over time, with new input, new experiences, and sometimes therapeutic techniques, the brain begins to shift. The intensity of sensations may decrease. The patterns may change. But this process is not linear. It is dynamic. Sometimes moving forward, sometimes remaining stable, sometimes changing in unexpected ways. This reflects the nature of the brain itself, not as a rigid system, but as something alive, responsive, continuously evolving. There is also an important role for experience and practice in shaping neuroplasticity. The brain responds to what it does repeatedly, what it focuses on, what it engages with. If certain patterns are reinforced, they become stronger. If they are not used, they may weaken over time. This is why therapies like mirror therapy can be effective. They provide new experiences, new signals, new patterns for the brain to learn from. And through repetition, these patterns can begin to reshape the internal map. This ability to change is also closely linked to recovery, not just in phantom limb experiences, but in many areas of brain function. After injury, after change, after loss, the brain has the capacity to adapt, to find new pathways, to restore function in different ways. This does not mean the brain returns to exactly what it was before, but it finds new forms of balance, new ways of organizing experience. And within this process, there is something quietly reassuring. The understanding that the brain is not stuck, that it is always moving toward adjustment, toward integration, toward stability, even when experiences feel unusual, even when sensations seem unexpected. The brain is working, learning, adapting, and this leads to a deeper reflection that the body we feel, the sensations we experience, are not fixed realities. They are the result of patterns that can change, that can evolve, that can be reshaped over time. The brain, in this sense, is not simply a structure. It is a process, a dynamic system that continuously updates itself, responding to the world, responding to the body, responding to experience. And within this dynamic system, phantom limbs are not an anomaly. They are an example, a window into how flexible the brain truly is, how it holds on to the past, while slowly adapting to the present. And as we continue, we will move even deeper into this idea, because beyond maps and memory, beyond sensation and adaptation, there is something even more fundamental, the experience of having a body at all, and how that experience is created quietly within the mind. As we continue drifting gently through this quiet exploration, we arrive at something even deeper, not just how the brain maps the body or remembers it, but how the body itself is experienced. Because there is a subtle truth we rarely notice. The body you feel is not the body itself. It is the experience of the body, a construction, a quiet creation inside the mind. Even now, as you lie still and listen, you can feel where your body is. You can sense your hands, your arms, the position of your legs, and yet you are not looking at them. You are not touching them directly. You are simply aware. This awareness comes from a system known as proprioception, a quiet sense, often unnoticed, but always present. Proprioception is the brain's ability to know where the body is in space, without needing to see it, without needing to think about it. Signals from muscles, joints, and tendons travel continuously to the brain. They describe position, movement, tension, and the brain integrates these signals into a coherent sense of the body. This is why you can close your eyes and still know where your hand is, why you can move in the dark and still feel oriented. But proprioception is only one part of a larger system. The brain does not rely on a single source of information. It combines many: touch, vision, balance, movement. All of these signals are gathered and then integrated, blended together into a single experience, a unified sense of the body. This process is known as sensory integration, and it is happening all the time, quietly, seamlessly, without effort. The result is something that feels simple, natural, obvious. The feeling that your body is whole, that it belongs to you, that it exists exactly where you expect it to be. But beneath this simplicity lies a complex process, because the brain must constantly update this experience, adjusting for movement, for changes in position, for new sensations. It must maintain stability, even as everything shifts. This is why the body feels continuous, stable, reliable, even though the signals that create it are always changing. The brain smooths these signals, organizes them, creates a consistent model, and this model becomes your sense of self in the physical world. This is also why phantom limbs can feel so natural, because the brain is not relying only on current input. It is relying on its internal model, its expectation of what the body should be. If the model still includes a limb, then that limb can still be felt, even without physical presence. To the brain, the experience is consistent. It fits within the existing structure, and so it feels real. Not imagined, not artificial, but natural. This reveals something quietly profound, that the body we experience is not simply the physical form, it is the brain's interpretation of that form, a living model, a dynamic construction, one that is continuously updated but not instantly replaced. There is also a deep connection between this body experience and consciousness, because the sense of having a body is part of being aware. It anchors you, gives you a point of reference, a place from which you perceive the world. Without this sense, the world would feel less stable, less defined. So the brain works constantly to maintain it, to preserve a consistent experience of the body, even when signals are incomplete, even when something has changed. It fills in the gaps, maintains continuity, protects the sense of self. This is why the body feels like something you have, even though it is something the brain is actively creating. And this creation is not rigid. It can be influenced, shifted, adapted, as we saw with mirror therapy, as we see with neuroplasticity, as we experience in phantom limbs. The brain is always balancing between incoming signals and internal expectations. And when these two align, the experience feels stable. But when they differ, the brain gently adjusts, trying to restore harmony. This continuous adjustment is what allows the body to feel whole, even when parts are missing, even when signals change, even when the physical reality is different. Because what matters most to the brain is not the physical object, but the experience, the internal model, the sense of presence. In this way, the body is not just something you observe, it is something you experience from within, a quiet construction of awareness, a pattern of signals and interpretation. And this leads to a deeper reflection, that the boundary between the body and the mind is not as clear as it may seem. They are not separate. They are part of the same system, the same process, working together to create the experience of being. And as we continue, we will explore something even more fascinating. Because if the brain can maintain the sense of a missing limb, it can also do something unexpected. It can adopt something new, something that was never part of the body at all, and make it feel as if it belongs. As we continue this quiet exploration, we arrive at something both surprising and strangely beautiful. The realization that the brain can do more than remember the body. It can recreate it, and sometimes it can even adopt something new, something that was never part of the body at all. To understand this, imagine a simple experiment. A person sits at a table. One of their hands is hidden from view. In front of them, placed carefully where their hand would normally be, is a rubber hand. At first, it looks like an object, separate, not connected, clearly not part of the body. But then, something begins to happen. A gentle brush touches the hidden real hand, and at the same time, the same motion is applied to the rubber hand. The strokes are synchronized, soft, consistent. The brain receives two streams of information: touch from the real hand, visual input from the rubber hand. And over time, these signals begin to align. The brain tries to make sense of them, to create a single coherent experience. And slowly, something shifts. The rubber hand begins to feel familiar, not just seen, but felt. The person may begin to experience the sensation as if it is coming from the rubber hand itself, as if that hand is now part of them. This is known as the rubber hand illusion, and it reveals something deeply important, that the brain's sense of body ownership is not fixed. It is flexible, constructed, dependent on the signals it receives. The brain does not ask, "Is this truly my hand?" It asks, "Do the signals match?" If what it sees and what it feels are consistent, it begins to accept the object as part of the body, even if it was not there before. This same principle extends beyond simple experiments. In virtual reality, people can experience entirely new bodies, different shapes, different sizes, different forms. And yet, after a short time, the brain adapts. The new body begins to feel natural. Movements feel connected. Sensations feel aligned. The experience becomes immersive, real, not because the body has changed physically, but because the brain has updated its internal model. This flexibility is what allows us to interact with tools, to use objects as extensions of ourselves. A pen becomes part of the hand. A vehicle becomes part of movement. The brain extends its map to include what it interacts with consistently. But this flexibility also means that the brain can be gently misled, not in a harmful way, but in a revealing one. It shows how perception is built, how easily it can shift, how dependent it is on integration. The combination of vision, touch, and expectation. And this leads to a deeper question. Why do we feel that something is our body? What creates that sense of ownership? Part of the answer lies in timing. When visual and sensory signals occur together, the brain assumes they belong to the same source. Part of it lies in consistency. If the signals continue to match, the brain reinforces the connection. And part of it lies in expectation. The brain predicts what should happen. And when those predictions are confirmed, the experience becomes stable. This is how the sense of "this is my hand" is formed. Not through a single signal, but through a pattern, a continuous alignment of perception. And when that pattern changes, the sense of ownership can change with it. This is why the rubber hand illusion feels so convincing. And this is also why it helps us understand phantom limbs, because in both cases, the brain is working with its internal model, trying to align signals, trying to maintain coherence. In phantom limbs, the brain continues to include a limb that is no longer there. In illusions, the brain begins to include something new. In both cases, the experience is real, because it is constructed through the same process. This reveals something quietly profound, that the boundary between the body and the world is not fixed. It is defined by perception, by integration, by the brain's ongoing effort to create a stable sense of self. And this boundary can shift, expand, adapt, without us even noticing. The body we feel is not a static object. It is a living experience, one that can change, one that can be influenced, one that is continuously being created. This does not make the body less real. It makes it more dynamic, more responsive, more deeply connected to the mind. And as we continue, we move towards something even broader. Because beyond illusions and experiments, beyond specific experiences like phantom limbs, there is a deeper question. What do these phenomena tell us about the nature of the mind itself? About how reality is constructed? About how experience is formed? And about the quiet, powerful role the brain plays in shaping everything we feel? As we continue this quiet journey, we step into a place where curiosity becomes care, where understanding the brain is not only about knowledge, but about helping people feel better. Phantom limbs are not only a fascinating window into the mind, they are also something many people live with, something doctors, scientists, and researchers have been gently studying, trying to understand and to ease. Over time, medicine has developed ways to observe what is happening inside the brain, not by opening it, but by listening to its activity. One of the most powerful tools for this is brain imaging. Techniques like fMRI, or functional magnetic resonance imaging, allow scientists to see which areas of the brain are active, which regions are communicating, which patterns emerge during different experiences. When people with phantom limbs are studied using these tools, something remarkable appears. The areas of the brain that once represented the missing limb are still active. When a person feels their phantom hand, the same regions light up as they would if the physical hand were still there. This confirms something we have been gently exploring, that the brain's map of the body remains, even when the body has changed. These discoveries have helped shape modern approaches to treatment, because once we understand that the experience comes from the brain, we can begin to work with the brain, not against it. Doctors and therapists now use a variety of methods to help reduce phantom sensations, especially pain. Some approaches are simple, like mirror therapy, which we explored earlier. Others involve guided movement, visualization, or gentle sensory training, helping the brain receive new input, new patterns, new ways of interpreting the body. There are also techniques that focus on calming the nervous system, reducing the intensity of signals, helping the brain shift away from patterns associated with pain. In some cases, medications are used, not to remove the experience entirely, but to soften it, to reduce discomfort, to support the brain's process of adaptation. At the same time, technology has begun to open new possibilities. One of the most exciting areas is the development of prosthetic limbs that can connect more directly with the brain. These are not simply mechanical replacements. They are designed to interact with neural signals, to receive commands from the brain, and in some cases, to send feedback back to it. Through these systems, a person may be able to move an artificial limb using their thoughts, and even begin to feel sensations through it. This creates a new kind of connection, a new loop between intention and perception, helping the brain rebuild its map, integrate the prosthetic as part of the body. This is where we begin to see the emergence of brain-machine interfaces, systems that connect the brain to external devices, translating neural signals into action, and, in return, providing feedback that the brain can interpret. This field is still developing, but it reflects a deeper understanding that the brain is adaptable enough to extend itself beyond the biological body, to include new tools, new forms, new ways of interacting with the world. All of this research continues to grow, slowly, carefully, each study adding a small piece to a much larger picture. And yet, even with all that has been learned, there are still questions. Why do some people experience phantom pain intensely, while others do not? Why does the experience change over time? Why does the brain hold on to certain patterns and release others? These questions remind us that the brain is not a simple system. It is layered, dynamic, shaped by countless interactions between biology, experience, and perception. But within this complexity, there is also progress, a growing understanding, a sense that we are slowly learning how to work with the brain's natural processes. Rather than trying to force change, we guide it, support it, offer it new information, new experiences, and allow it to adapt. This is the quiet direction of modern science. Not control, but collaboration, working with the brain as it reshapes itself. And as we look toward the future, there is a gentle sense of possibility that one day we may understand these processes even more deeply, that treatments may become more precise, more effective, more personalized. But even now, there is something already clear, that phantom limbs are not simply a mystery. They are a message, a reflection of how the brain constructs the body, how it holds on to experience, how it adapts, and how it continues to shape what we feel, even in the absence of physical form. And as we continue, we move toward a broader reflection, because what we have learned here extends beyond phantom limbs. It touches something more fundamental, something about the nature of perception itself, about how the mind creates reality, and about the quiet, powerful role it plays in shaping every experience we have. As we move gently toward the end of this journey, we arrive at something deeper than the body, something that touches the nature of experience itself, because phantom limbs are not only about sensation, they're about how the mind creates reality. We often think of the world as something we simply perceive, something that exists exactly as it is, and that we observe directly. But the truth is quieter than that. What we experience is not the world itself, but the brain's interpretation of it. Every sight, every sound, every sensation, all of it is processed, organized, and constructed by the brain. The brain receives signals, but it does not pass them through unchanged. It shapes them, fills in gaps, predicts what should be there, and from this, it creates a coherent experience. This is what we call perception, and perception is not always identical to physical reality. It is influenced by expectation, by memory, by context, by the patterns the brain has learned over time. Phantom limbs reveal this in a very clear way, because here we have an experience without a physical object, a sensation without a corresponding limb, and yet the experience feels real, complete, convincing. This tells us something important. That experience does not require a direct physical source. It requires the brain. The brain is capable of generating the feeling, even in the absence of input, because it is always working with its internal model, its understanding of the body, its expectations, its patterns. When those patterns remain active, the experience can remain as well, even when the external object is gone. This also shows us how the brain deals with absence. When something is missing, the brain does not simply leave a gap. It tries to fill it, to maintain continuity, to preserve a stable sense of the world. This is part of its role, to reduce uncertainty, to create a consistent experience. And so, it may generate sensation. Even when there is no new signal, it may maintain the feeling of the body, even when the body has changed. This has deeper implications, because it suggests that what we feel as real is always shaped by the mind, not in a way that makes it less real, but in a way that reveals its source. Experience is constructed, moment by moment, through the interaction of signals, memory, and expectation. This also changes how we understand the relationship between the body and consciousness. We often think of the body as something fixed, and consciousness as something that observes it. But in reality, the two are deeply connected. The sense of having a body is part of consciousness itself. It is how we locate ourselves in the world, how we experience presence. And if that sense can persist without a physical limb, then it is not tied only to the physical form. It is tied to the brain's model of that form. This leads to a quiet reflection that the self we experience is not simply the body, but the experience of the body, a construction that feels stable, but is constantly being maintained, constantly being updated, constantly being created. Phantom limbs are one example of this process, but the principle extends further, to all perception, to all sensation, to everything we experience. The brain is always building, always interpreting, always shaping reality. And within this, there is something both humbling and calming, because it reminds us that experience is not fixed. It can change. It can adapt. It can soften, just as phantom pain can shift. Just as sensations can evolve, so too can the broader patterns of perception. The brain is not locked into a single way of experiencing the world. It is flexible, responsive, capable of transformation. And this means that what we feel, what we perceive, is not only determined by what is outside, but also by how the mind interprets it. This does not make experience uncertain. It makes it dynamic, alive, part of an ongoing process. And as we gently come closer to the end of this journey, we carry with us this understanding that the brain is not simply receiving the world, it is quietly creating it, moment by moment, in ways that are often invisible, but always present. And in that quiet creation, there is a sense of wonder, a calm realization that the world we feel is as much within us as it is around us. Segment 10, The Quiet Illusion of the Body, to 1,100 words, including outro. And now, as we gently arrive at the final part of our journey, we return to something simple. The feeling of being in a body. Right now, without looking, you can sense yourself, the position of your hands, the weight of your body resting, the quiet awareness of where you are, and it feels complete, whole, as if nothing is missing, as if everything is exactly where it should be. But as we have discovered tonight, this feeling does not come directly from the body itself. It comes from the brain, from a quiet and continuous process of construction, a process that gathers signals, integrates them, and shapes them into a single stable experience. The body you feel is a representation, a living map, maintained moment by moment. And this is why it feels so seamless, so natural, because the brain works constantly to preserve that sense of wholeness, to maintain continuity, to ensure that your experience of yourself remains stable, even when the signals are incomplete, even when something has changed. It fills in the gaps, smooths over differences, keeps the experience intact. This is why phantom limbs are possible, because the brain is not simply reacting to what is physically present. It is maintaining what it understands to be true, holding on to the structure it has built over time. And in doing so, it reveals something quietly profound, that the body is not only something we have, but something we experience, something created, something interpreted. And this does not make it less real. It makes it more deeply connected to the mind. Because what we call the body is not just physical matter, it is sensation, awareness, perception, all woven together into a single experience. Phantom limbs offer us a gentle window into this process, a way of seeing what is usually hidden. They show us that experience can remain, even without the physical object. That sensation can exist, even without direct input, and that the brain is always working, quietly maintaining the sense of self. This leads to a calm and subtle reflection that the boundary between the mind and the body is not a clear line. It is a relationship, a continuous interaction, where the brain shapes the experience of the body, and the body provides signals that guide the brain. Together, they create the feeling of being here, of being present, of existing within a form, and this process continues, moment by moment, even as you begin to rest more deeply, even as your thoughts grow quieter, even as sleep begins to approach. The brain does not stop. It simply shifts from waking awareness into dreaming, from active perception into quiet restoration. And through all of this, it continues to hold the sense of the body, softly, gently, like a background presence. Now, as you lie here, let that sense of the body become lighter, less defined, less something you need to hold on to, and more something that can simply be. Imagine your body as a soft outline, not fixed, but gently fading into the surrounding space, supported, at ease, and within that space, allow your awareness to rest. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to understand further. The mind has already done its work, and now it can begin to settle, to slow, to drift, like a quiet wave returning to still water. Thank you for spending this time here on Boring Science for Sleep, where curiosity becomes calm and science gently fades into rest. If you're still awake, that's perfectly okay. Just continue listening. Let your breathing remain slow and natural. And if sleep begins to come, allow it. Softly, without effort. Good night, and sleep well.